Good morning and welcome to the Point. The next election, the big election here in Michigan, is more than a year away. It will be the August primary, and that's when there will be a lot of activity. Everything from governor all the way down to all of the state house races are up for grabs next year. But this morning we're going to focus on governor. As you know, Governor Rick Snyder is term limited. He can't run again, so it could draw a pretty big field. One Democrat who started early and has already raised a lot of money is former Senator Gretchen Whitmer. We sat down and talked with her about why she's running and what she expects. And before you ask the question, yes, we'll be talking to any number of people who are running. We are just now beginning our conversation about Decision 2018. One of them is the reality of politics today. You've got to get your name out there. You've got to make sure you tie up the endorsements, and you've got to raise money. You appear to be doing all three.
Well, I'm working hard. I can tell you that, what's going on in Michigan, state government is not working for the people right now. And the status quo is downright dangerous. And after this last election, I think one of the lessons is that we can't take anyone or any community for granted. It's incumbent on me to work hard to get into every community that I can, because everyone in the state is important. And I'm not going to write off any particular part of the state. It's incumbent on me to build this organization and to work with people. It's time for us to set the agenda that really thinks about what's in the best interest of the people of the state before anything else. And as a mom, as a prosecutor, as a former legislative leader, I am willing to take on anyone who stands in the way of progress and work with anyone who wants to move this state forward. And that takes time to build this.
Let's go back then and start with who you are. Most people remember you from your time of service in the legislature. You've been on this show any number of times. You were the leader of the Democrats in the Senate. You served in the House. You were recently the Ingham County prosecutor. But talk to me a little bit about your background and what got you interested in running for office in the first place, because you were in the House during some pretty tumultuous times. Senate too, but the House I think a little rougher. That's
right. And when I was growing up here in Grand Rapids, it never dawned on me that I might be running for governor of Michigan. But when I was in the Michigan legislature, I think it was one of those opportunities to really work with people on both sides of the aisle on a lot of issues. I had moments where I disagreed with a Democratic governor and I took her on, and I have moments where I've rolled up my sleeves and negotiated deals with a Republican governor to extend Medicaid, for instance, in Michigan. We have 650,000 people in our state who weren't covered before, and they are now. I think that's the kind of leadership that we need in this state, that is really focused on putting the people of Michigan first. Because I will tell you that when you look at what's happening in Lansing, in our state capital, the status quo is not working for people. When you think about hugging your sons in the morning and sending them off to school, you need to have confidence that they're getting the skills that they need to be successful. When I think about the underemployed or unemployed worker in Macomb County, they need to be connected to opportunities so they can get skills and take care of their families and make a good living. When we look at our roads, we should be able to rely on our infrastructure to move our families safely and deliver our goods on time. And frankly, I don't know how we can live up to our motto as the Great Lakes state when we still have a city that cannot turn on their taps and bathe their children, much less drink the water. We deserve better. We deserve leadership that is going to listen to the people of this state and always put the people first.
Well, let's start with Flint. $300 million of federal and state money has been or is flowing to that area. Pardon me. If you were elected governor, what would you want to do beyond that?
Well, we just acknowledged the 3-year anniversary of when the water system was changed to the Flint River. Very early on, General Motors stopped using that water source because it was corroding their engine blocks. And yet no red flags went off in state government. The governor, the legislature, people in government at every level failed the people of Flint. What we need is not people who are going to be bean counters and looking just at spreadsheets. It's really about getting into the city and finding out what's going on when you have the first red flag go up so that you can fix the problems. Every one of us in this state should be worried about leadership that lets a situation like Flint happen in the first place and then continue to fester. Now, growing up in Michigan, my favorite memories were of swimming in the Thornapple River with my brother and sister, or fishing for perch off the dock in Onekama, climbing the sand dunes. The state of Michigan is home to 20% of the world's fresh water, and we still have a city that can't drink their tap water. And so it's really about leadership that is going to go in and fix the problem as soon as the problem is known, and to get the people of Flint the wraparound services that they're going to need to be successful.
If you were governor and had the opportunity, I mean, obviously the appropriations have been made and they're replacing some of the infrastructure. It's very slow work. Mm-hmm. The water quality has not come back. It's not even as much as, according to Senator Ananek, not so much maybe about lead content, but about the bacteria content in there. I mean, despite whatever has been done, this is going to be a long-term project for whomever the next governor is.
Right, and Republican and Democratic alike, we need leaders who are going to work together to solve the problem and to give all the children in Flint who've been poisoned by lead the help that they're going to need to be successful. We got a lot of communities that have too much lead in their water. We know that after what's happened in Flint because we're scrutinizing it. But is there the leadership there to roll up your sleeves, get to the table, no matter how long it takes, and to carve out solutions and make them a reality for people? I mean, this is such a failure of leadership on so many levels. I was raised by a Milliken Republican dad and a Frank Kelly Democrat mom, and they didn't just vote that way. My dad was actually in the Milliken administration as the director of commerce. My mom was one of Frank Kelly's top lawyers in the Attorney General's office. I know that not every good idea stems from one side of the aisle or the other. I know that our best work is done when we have a group of people around the table that is representative of our state, the West Side and Southeast Michigan, as well as the Upper Peninsula, all parties, people of all walks of life. I have been in rooms where we have negotiated through the night as legislators and with the executive branch. I know how to get these things done, and I think that's something that's really important as we think about the type of leadership we need here in Michigan.
You said something that obviously touches me very closely. As you mentioned, my sons, your daughters have, who I remember as being quite small, have now grown. That was one of the factors in you not running for governor earlier, wasn't it? That your kids were pretty young.
I was encouraged to run for governor 8 years ago. I was encouraged to run for governor 4 years ago. And as any parent knows, my first and foremost worry is what is going to be in the best interest of my kids on the home front. I am now the proud parent of 2 nice teenage daughters, which I'm doing better than my parents were. But I'll tell you that I think it's your teenage kids need you in a different way than kids in elementary school. And this is a family affair. Everyone in my family is involved in this and excited about this and taking part in it, because we all know that we in Michigan deserve better and that we want to be a part of solving the problems that we are facing in this state. And frankly, I want this state to be a state where my kids want to live when they grow up, where they have opportunity in Michigan. And I don't want that just for my kids. I want that for your kids and everyone's kids across this state. We need leadership that is really going to make Michigan a place that lures people to come back, and Michiganders want to and can afford to stay here because they can thrive right here in our state.
One of the things you talked about is making sure that our kids are getting the proper training when they go off to school every morning. And that's something we've heard talked about a lot from this governor and previous governors. But one of the things that we find, according to at least the government's numbers, there may be 95 or 96 or 97,000 jobs in this state that are open, but the people don't have the right skills to get to them. And I know that over at the talent part of the MEDC, they're coming up with recommendations, working with the superintendent of public education to try to get that process going. But it occurs to me, again, that whomever the next governor is going to have to focus a lot on something my words, not yours, we as a state have neglected, and that's skilled trade education.
Right. Well, economists peg our number at 30%. 30% of our workforce has the skills they need in a 21st century economy. 30%, and that's across all disciplines. That means we need more people who've got 4-year degrees, more people that have the community college training, more people that have skilled trades. That's across all disciplines, and that should tell you that we have done we've neglected to ensure that the people in our own state have the skills that they need in order to get good paying jobs where they can take care of their families and retire with dignity. That's a long, proud part of our tradition in Michigan, that this is the place where people came for those things, and right now you can't find it. And so I recognize that that's a critical thing for us to do in this state, to get people into good paying jobs. You've got to give them a path to the skills that they need so that they've got the qualifications for them. It's a different economy, and our system hasn't changed in many decades, and I think that's the kind of failed leadership that I'm thinking about when I talk about that. We really deserve better, and we deserve leaders who are going to stake out a bold future for people in our state, kids in our schools, but also the displaced workers or underemployed people in our workforce right now.
In the coming fiscal year, there'll be roughly $14 billion that will be spent towards education in some form or another. Yet, from the time before your time, when my generation was going to college, in most cases, the government was picking up about 75% of the tab, and the tuition part that was paid for by students and families around 25%. That's completely inverted and actually gotten maybe a little bit more, with students picking up, in some cases, as much as 80%. Now, given that we're already spending X amount of dollars and that tuitions have inverted and people are leaving higher education schools with tens of or hundreds of thousands of dollars debt, how do you attack something that has gotten, and not just here, all over the country, out of control?
Well, one of the things that I did when I was in the legislature, and you remember, I introduced the Michigan 2020, which was a real plan to attack the costs of higher education for kids throughout Michigan. It was loosely modeled after the Kalamazoo Promise, which has had such a number of great impacts on the city of Kalamazoo, and many different parts in our state. Many different cities have created their own little promise, but you shouldn't have to live in one of those communities to have an opportunity to get a degree beyond high school, a degree that is necessary to get into a good job, or your path to finding work that you enjoy doing, that you can take care of your family doing. So I would envision that Michigan would be a heck of a lot better off if we really did attack the cost of a higher education degree, but also that we make sure that all kids know that that 4-year degree isn't for everybody, nor should it have to be. Back to your question on skills, kids should confront and have the ability to explore different avenues, different professional paths for everyone. And so we've got to make it attainable for a 4-year degree or a community college or trades, and we've got to do that on community college by making it affordable.
One of the things that you are keenly aware of is that Lansing can be sometimes a very serene, very enjoyable, very lovely place. Sometimes it's the nastiest place to be in the state of Michigan, depending on the environment under that dome. You know what it's like for a Democratic governor to have one chamber of the House and not the other. I make no predictions about what will happen in future elections, but given the overall numbers, looking at the districts the way they are, if you were successful, it seems likely to this political observer that you might be facing a situation similar to that, or perhaps even have both houses. How do you make that work when sometimes that animosity does make Lansing a little uncomfortable?
Well, Michigan is a state that goes back and forth. We are a 50-50 state. We've got 2 U.S. senators who are Democrats, and our whole state government is run by Republicans right now. And I think that kind of goes to the credentials that I bring to the table. I served with 3 different governors during my time in the legislature, and I'll tell you, there was one who was better able to get an agenda accomplished than the other 2, and that was John Engler. And I don't say that because I'm a fan of the agenda that Governor Engler pushed. I'm a Democrat, he's a Republican, but I recognize that his ability to understand state government from all the time he spent in the legislature, his knowledge of where the levers of power are in the executive office, and his fearlessness about using them to accomplish an agenda and his willingness to work with people on either side of the aisle if they wanted to be, if they bought into the agenda he was pushing, I think set him apart. And frankly, I know that I am the only one that brings those credentials to the table, especially in the Democratic primary, and I'm willing to put that kind of work ethic into solving problems. I'll work with anyone. The table that I will set will have a seat for everyone. If you're really genuinely interested in trying to make sure our schools are working for our kids, our people have paths to good paying careers, and that government is focused on putting people first again.
As I said, this is just the first of many interviews we will do with people running for governor and for U.S. Senate and for U.S. House, State Senate. They're all up in this coming election. It's going to be an important one, so I hope you'll stay with us. We're back with more To the Point. Welcome back to the Point. This past week in Lansing, a number of recommendations were laid out. The whole idea is how to get education to work with students so they'll be prepared for jobs that will be available when they graduate. Roger Curtis is the head of talent in the state of Michigan. We talked with him.
We kind of laser focused on talent. That is the number one issue in the state. And in my opinion, you couldn't talk about talent without talking about education. And so we very quickly got together with Superintendent Whiston and his team. I'm not from state government, so I qualify the statement with this, but I've been told by everyone around me who has been for years, they have never seen this kind of teamwork between Department of Education, Superintendent Whiston in particular, and any other agency. And he and his team have been absolutely fantastic. Get together, rolled up our sleeves and said, look, we certainly have a marketing issue, if you will, with professional trades and the stereotypes, unwarranted stereotypes around many of the jobs and the misperceptions about many of the jobs that we have available in professional trades. But even if we had streams and hundreds of thousands of kids headed in that direction, we're not set up to adequately take care of them from a career and technical education, multiple pathway kind of opportunity in the educational system. And that's where Superintendent Whiston has been. You're right. Let's fix this. We've got some solutions. Let's get the other stakeholders involved. So we got industry, we got labor, we got educators at all levels, elementary, middle, high school, community colleges, superintendents, teachers, counselors, and we got them all at the table. And we heard what their issues were as well. And now we're going to go solve it, do the best we can.
It's an interesting conundrum because I'm older than you, but from my generation into yours, we were told, go to 4 years of college, get a job that you dress like this and that you come home at 5 o'clock or whatever the promise was that we were sold. And while there's nothing wrong with that advice to the degree that it has served many people well, it isn't necessarily the best advice for everybody, is it?
No, it's not. Look, we as human beings love simple solutions, either or. You're going to go here or you're going to do this. And we can't do that anymore. That's a huge injustice to our kids because a lot of them don't want to do this bucket. A lot of them don't want to do this one either. They want the stuff in the middle. And when you go talk to employers, that's great because we need all the above. We still need engineers. We need plumbers. We need IT. We need computer science folks. We need healthcare folks. We need doctors. We need auto repair. We need welders. We need all of that. I think where it really started, the trouble, is manufacturing in the state. A lot of the adults remember what they perceive as jobs that ended up in a bad situation because of the recession. That's also, as I say, that was our generation of blacksmiths. As the Model T starting to roll off the assembly line. And we created a situation where that generation didn't have the ability to upskill or reskill. So they have in their head that those jobs, and some people think that they're dirty. I would say more think that it's just going to end in a dead end if there's another huge recession. And I'm going to say no, because not only do we need to train our students for those positions, which are way different than what they used to be because of the technology involved, even a CNC machine, think of the technology involved. But we've got to train them to be lifelong learners so that the blacksmith can go to something to do with the Model T, that can go to something to do with the airplane. Now, I'm using a crazy analogy, but I heard a great quote the other day. Technology has never moved as fast as it is right now in the history of mankind, nor will it move as slowly as it is right now in the history of humans. So to think that even if we got CTE and all the professional trades just right now, and we filled those jobs, if we filled them the same way as we did for a previous generation, it will end up the same way. We've got to teach these kids to be able to go in with the mindset of I'm learning for the job today, but the technology, I'm going to get reskilled and upskilled on and on and on. We've got to do that. And we as adults have to be able to help them do that. And we've really shut down that conversation. We've just said, I'll get your job back. A lot of politicians have filled that vacuum. And instead of talking about the complicated hard stuff of retraining and upskilling, I'll just get your old job back. It's gone. It's gone. And these are very high-tech, very skilled positions that we need. And the stereotype, we need to blow it up. And we have a lot of work to do on that. And it's not just with parents. It's with teachers, counselors, coaches. All the adults that influence our children's life have been predisposed to go four-year institution because we don't want you going this way. So we've got a lot of work to do, but we'll get there.
And just to bring it to a final point, because you made this case that when people were getting jobs, that many of them did end in the Great Recession, and with no disrespect to any people who held those were not necessarily when they started high-skilled jobs, nor did they require a high level of education,
Right.
and in some cases not even a high school education.
That's right.
So it's a completely different entry
you.
level point that it will be for these skilled jobs than it was 40 years ago.
Oh, dramatically. I mean, you look at the jobs today and what's in healthcare, welding. I mean, these laser welders are very complicated pieces of equipment. The CNC machining, tool and die making, and the tools and the parts that they're making for airplanes and spaceships and autonomous vehicles and all these things, the level of technology and the fact that it's only going to just continue to grow exponentially quicker. To me, there is the robots are doing that quote unquote dirty, repetitive work. Now you need kids and adults who can think on their feet, critical thinkers, collaborative, problem solving. Yes, definitely know their discipline, whatever that may be, but are able to think more broadly than just that. And so we have a lot to do with CTE from a perception standpoint. I'm very excited about what the governor and the recommendations that Superintendent Whiston and I with all the stakeholders out there brought forth. The governor loves them.
You can find a list of all of those recommendations at woodtv.com. We're back with more To The Point. So we're already talking about Decision 2018. It is going to be an interesting election cycle. That's why I hope you'll join us here every Sunday morning on Wood TV for To The Point.